Alrighty, so I'm recording for week 3. We are currently in week 1, and it seems like we're getting a pretty good start. Hopefully you're getting these local repos set up, cloning them, and then pushing your code up to GitHub. This is going to be the last week that if you haven't done that, that I'll accept work that's done purely on the web interface for GitHub, something I've talked about before. So make sure that if you had any issues with this code up, this first section, and now you've already been through another, that and even the Learn Togethers require you post something up to GitHub. Make sure you're doing it locally, okay? So I just want to say that. And the other thing is that because the Learn Togethers do require replies, just know that if you're working ahead, which I really appreciate that there are some students that do, that until you've done all the work, I don't grade it. Meaning, in this case, you needed to do 2 replies. So until I see all the work done, I don't grade it. I go in here and I review it each day. I review and grade each day. And when I see all the work done on the items like this, then I will grade them. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Again, the chat is really helpful for those things. Okay, so now, again, just giving you a heads up about when I'm recording this. We are going into our week 3 of our content, and I'll do a code up for 4 next, just talking about section 4 a little bit, because hopefully at this point you have the process down. But what we're going to do in our Learn Together week 3 is really consider our first develop it. Okay, because I had talked about this before, but you'll really see this clearly. And I'll go ahead and release week 3 right now. And all that does is now you'll be able to see it. But I've talked about this schedule, so I'm just giving you the heads up again. Is when we get to week 4, we only have 1 item due for that week because our first develop it is due here. Okay, and so on this Learn Together, what I'm going to have you do is actually consider the idea of what you're going to develop. And here's what I want you to know is you're going to actually develop 2 things, okay? 2 different type of applications. And that's what the write-up here talks about, is give some thought to an information that affects you on a daily basis or that you naturally are interested in. Like here's examples: mileage, tip calculations for me, daily macronutrients, right? So just think about this. So give this some thought and come up with something. You're not committed at this point, but I'm going to tell you the more committed you are, the easier this becomes, because then it naturally leads to the next step. Okay, so that's the first thing. So in a sense, these first 2 items here are really the first 2 or the different apps that you're going to create. And in this case, they're not full-blown apps, they're just code. Okay, so just consider that as we move forward, then this one will become closer to a full-blown app. And that's what I say on number 2 is now give some thought to an app, right? Not really related to this one, right? So this isn't actually an app that you would want to create. Okay, so just give some thought to that. And then I'll show you in a minute just what I did over the summer. I'm actually going to probably redo and do a different topic for now that the semester started. Just because the more you code, the more you use that muscle, the better, the easier it becomes. So that's why when you're doing, and I've said this, so I'll say it again, when you're doing the code ups, when he's giving you a challenge, is really attempt to complete those challenges without looking at the code, because that's when you really develop that muscle. Okay? Anyway, I'll show you mine in a second, what I did just as I was working through this, right? So, and it does need to be different than what he's showing in his videos. So then in your local public repo, right, then create a new folder called develop, and inside that folder create a new markdown file called develop1, and inside that write the answers to what, your thoughts here, right? And then provide in your reply a link to that file. Okay, so now I started doing this, but I'm actually going to do even a more detailed job here so we can talk about it. So because as I said before, when you do your develop it, which there are 5 for this class, you're going to need to have me do a code review. Okay, these code reviews are really important, an important part of your grade, an important part of your learning process. So I've told you that either you're going to come see me or we're going to use some kind of, and for my preference it's going to be Hangouts if you can't come and see me, but you'll need to actually connect with me through that Hangout process. Okay, so and we'll talk about the timing. So this is the other thing I want you to think about. So I want you, once I talk about the actual timing here, then think about the method that you're likely to select. Okay, so first thing let's do, I'm going to go to calendar and I'm going to select just our class. Oh, I don't maybe have this up yet, so we might not. Let's see if we can see it. Let me do this. I think I will be able to. Yeah. Okay, so here's the start of the semester. We're in, again, I'm recording for a future week. So then our first develop it is due. Let's see, our first develop it is due right here on the 10th. Okay, so what I would recommend is actually coming to see me anytime before, you know, midnight. Now that I say that with a little bit of a joke because I'm not up at midnight, right? So sometime either before the week before or no later than when I leave on Monday. Okay, so now just for a second, let me move over and show you something I included today in our course. And what I included today was actually my office hours, because I actually didn't know, it's taking a little bit here, I actually didn't know my office hours until I got in and made sure that I knew, oh my bad, that's not where I wanted to go, sorry. So I wasn't sure until I had some things worked out what those office hours were going to be. So in our course, under syllabus, here's my office hours. So I'm on Monday and Wednesday, I help teach a Java course, not JavaScript, but a Java class. And then I have an office hour from noon to 12:50. That should be PM right there. Okay, so generally if I'm in my office, I'm working on other things, but if you want to come to my office hour, obviously that's the best way to do it, right? Or if you want to schedule a hangout with me, that's a great time to do it. Again, what I'm talking about here would be sometime in that week before. And you might wonder, okay, Rio, you know students, they're not going to work on it until the last minute. That's true, but let me tell you why I'm suggesting this. Is if you come see me during this week before the item is actually due, then what I can do is give you immediate feedback and tell you what you would need to do to score better or what you would need to fix. Okay? So that's the benefit of coming the week before, and this is also part of why I only give you one item due this week. Okay, so just FYI. So can you submit it at midnight on that day? Yeah, and I will look at it the next day, right? So here's the other thing. I'm going to give you, right, from the time it's due, I'll give you until Friday to come either again virtually or in person to do that code review. But here's the deal. You can't change the code after the due date. You have to deal with whatever that grade is. You'll still just need to come in again either virtually or in person to do that. So hopefully that's a little more clear, right? So I'm suggesting you come see me the week before or even the day it's due, or if you're coming to see me after, just know that you can't modify code, and matter of fact, make sure that no code changes up on GitHub from the time that thing has been turned in. So let me come to the syllabus again and just walk through the rest of these. So then on Tuesday, Thursday, I have an office hour, and these two are in my actual office from Tuesday, Thursday from 1 p.m. to 1:50. And then on Friday, I'm actually in a lab. I'm actually holding a lab open for Java. So you're also welcome to come to that lab for whatever time and place, right? To actually have some more lab time if you just need some more help. But in that case, I'm in BE 127. So the next logical question I get, I think here would be, well, Rio, these are the times you're available, but what if I am not available until later, right? So here's the thing. This is why I'm wanting you to think about this now, right? Because if I can find a time that kind of meets for a lot of people, then maybe I can figure something out. But typically I try to shut off, at least doing these code reviews, no later than 6 o'clock at night if we're doing them virtually. Because I can do them at home, but I don't really want to work after 6 p.m. because I work pretty early and it's just my schedule. So I just want you to know that. So hopefully now you have a better, and typically not on the weekend unless you just have if that's the only time that works for you, right? I prefer to do it during the week if possible. I'm trying to be both, respectful of my schedule and of yours. So that's why I want you to give this some thought. So there's two things I'm hoping we get from this learn together, which is first to understand how the code review works, right? So when in the writing here, I've talked about, right? Do you have any questions, right? Does any of this not make sense? Please get clarification. And then also discuss maybe the timing and the method you're likely to select. And based on these, maybe I can figure out something a little more creative. I don't know. I don't know what they are, right? And if you are opposed to Hangout, which I think hopefully if you're on chat, you're already good to go, you would at least need a microphone if you're doing a virtual code review in that case, or at least headphones are better because it isolates the audio. Earbuds will work, but then you get some of that tinginess. So I would just prefer, if you are going to do a remote code review, that we do it, at least get a headset, a USB, an audio headset's fine. If you want to know more about that, ask me in chat. Okay, so in this case, I don't have it here. I do want you to do 2 replies, and I'll just put this in the writing, right? And I'll just note it to do a main post, right? So 150 word main post and 2 replies, 2 substantive replies, okay? All right, so that's what you need to do for that work. And then hopefully this will get us on that. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. Okay, so the last thing I'll show you is what I did over the summer. So over the summer for this first, this code is probably code you haven't seen yet. So don't get freaked out about it. This is code you're gonna see. All right, so I wrote a simple program that based on what somebody chooses for a breakfast, lunch, and a dinner, it calculates their carbon footprint. Now, these actually aren't based on any website science. Actually, probably if I was going to do this for this semester, I'd probably go and find those actual numbers of carbon units per type of eating that you do. But in this case, I did the foot, so I put food carbon value and transportation value, and then I figured out total carbon by adding those together. So there you can see I'm passing strings into the food carbon function, right? And then then I convert those strings into this variables. Don't convert them when you're passing them, and you'll learn about this, right? So then I'm just asking, was it strictly equal? Based on that, I set the food carbon to 0, and then actually I think I probably will do this, because I don't know why I was playing with it up there. I was just putting it inside the function itself, as I did here, and then returning, once I determine the food carbon, returning that to this value. So then that food carbon value is put in here. Okay, so the other one I did for an app I actually think of creating is one that I always enjoy, which is called Kitty Cat Match. So in this case, this is a game ultimately I would create, but again, I'm showing you the code. This is just an example of code for based on what you've learned so far in this class from the code up, that you should be able to at least write. Okay, but in my example, right, because this ultimately would be an interface where a user or a player would get a list of kitty cat cards, right, and then they would try to match them up. I just came up with some code that would just simulate the idea of randomly selecting a kitty cat, comparing it right to what the user selected, and I called it clicks here, but we're not doing web, we're not doing full web apps here, and then if there's a match right between the first and the second one, and then we look up for, and matter of fact, if we come down here, right? So in this case, I'm selecting random number, which is just get kitty cat 1 and 6, and that just says, right, it passes this into the random between a min and a max, and then it returns a random number between those, and then we compare those two values. Right, so and then it says get another one, and then it compares them. So obviously this is not the full program. This is just one aspect, probably a core aspect of a game that I would create, and obviously this would change over time, but it's a way that I took my idea. Again here, right, give some thought, because this is what you're doing, and I'm just showing you code examples of ultimately what I ended up doing for both of these, right? And the reason I'm doing two is that the more experience you get at doing this, again, I've said this before, the more that muscle of you doing things gets easier. But I will tell you that this will be the more challenging part of this class, and it's why, right, I've on the schedule given you, right, that week where you'll have one more learn together. After this, you will have a code up 4, which by this time you've learned all the things that you just saw me implement in my programs in order to do this first develop it. Okay? I know, a lot of information, good stuff. Hopefully if you have any questions, you'll ask me, but at least you have an idea. And as we get closer, right, as we probably get here, I will have redone mine to do something maybe different, maybe macronutrients, because that's something I've been more focused on lately. All right, let me see, is there anything else in here? So what I should see is I should see a link to your develop it 1, and make sure you give, somehow a heading difference between the two of these. Right, so in this one file you'll describe your first thoughts on the more simple, straightforward idea, and then also your first thoughts on an app idea, right? And then you'll hopefully understand better the timing of the code review, and you'll be telling me, what timing, like of the day, would maybe something probably would work, you would think this would work, and then the method you're likely to select. All right, talk to you later. Bye.